One question that I have been asked on multiple occasions over the years is, how do I go about selling a product which is standard? It is not particularly exciting, and buyers can buy my product or a very similar version of my product from a multitude of other suppliers. And what's more, they do that. How do I, as sometimes a new supplier, break into the marketplace and sell my product? And in this video, I would like to share some of the ideas that I have picked up over the years from suppliers that I have worked with. And in addition to that, the experience of selling myself at international trade shows around the world for more than 10 years. So, the first piece of advice that I would like to offer is to forget the product, in fact, and just focus on yourself. When the product is not extraordinary, then you become the differentiator. And the most important thing is to focus on professionalism, approachability, and more importantly, the most important thing of all is the enthusiasm and the energy that you bring to the table in any sales situation. That energy needs to be infectious. The buyers that you are talking to need to feel that energy and feed off that energy and gain a sense of confidence and trust from you as a result of that. One piece of advice that I would always stand by, and this served me very well in my days of selling at trade shows, was to ask for feedback. Ask for prospective buyers to give you feedback on the products, on the services, on the booth, on the marketplace, on the future direction. In fact, anything which you feel is of relevance to your business, ask them for feedback, and you will find, in fact, not on one single occasion did I find that somebody was not prepared to share their advice with me or give me their opinion on something that I asked for help with. And that is an incredibly good way to lengthen a conversation, to get embroiled in a much deeper conversation, and of course, to start building a much higher level of trust with somebody. Let's talk about control. Many suppliers that I've spoken to over the years worry about things which they absolutely cannot control. They can't control the market conditions. They can't control, for example, the pricing of raw materials. And they certainly can't control what their competitors are going to do. But the good news is that they can focus on what they can control. And there is a lot of things that they can control. So, for example, they can control how they present themselves, just basic things like what they're wearing. Are they looking smart? Are they looking hyper professional? Are they looking smart casual? What does their booth look like? I think one of the mistakes that a lot of suppliers make is that they try to jam pack their booth with every single product, every square inch of that particular booth. They want to fill it with a product. They feel that if they don't do that, they are wasting valuable sales space. And in fact, that is not something that they should be doing. They should be cherry picking the products which they feel are right for their customers at that particular moment in time, and strategically place these products in the booth in the best possible way. And be reassured that if they are speaking to a buyer and it's clear that the buyer is interested in another product which is in their range, which they haven't got at the trade show, then they will have photographs of that product even in a catalog, or possibly they'll have photographs on their telephone, which they can show to buyers, or at the very least, they can show product photographs and email those at a later date. This next point really does bear focusing on, and that is that just because an item is a standard item, you shouldn't feel that it is inferior in some way. There is always at least one selling point that you can really, truly highlight, despite the fact that that product is what you would call a standard item. So really think creatively about the product. What is it about that product which invites somebody to buy it, despite the fact that it can possibly be purchased from other suppliers? Is it the price? Is it the packaging? Is it the quality? Is it the durability? Is it the reliability? What is it? You can get creative and you can think about the different aspects of that product which you can highlight to a buyer. Let's talk about what buyers are actually looking for. And I think that there is always the misconception that buyers are just looking for innovation. They're looking for new products. And obviously, the purpose of a trade show is to highlight the latest trends in an industry, the latest products. And because of that, we get sucked into this world of innovation and newness. And of course, that is very important. But we must also not forget that buyers, in fact, are also looking for standard items. In fact, a lot of the ranges which they are selling on to their customers are made up of just bulk standard items, items that we buy every single day. There is maybe not much of a point of differentiation between those items. And our job is to try to sell those items despite the fact that they may be considered to be lacking a degree of innovation because they are still highly desirable and needed on the international marketplace. Let's also not underestimate what we are up against, particularly if we are new suppliers. It is very difficult for us as new suppliers to break into that network, that web, if you like, of existing suppliers which our potential customers have. How do we go about doing that? And we have to do that by reducing the perceived risk that potential customers have when they look at us for the first time. How do we do that? Very simply, I have found with the suppliers that I've worked with over the years and from my own experience of trading for over 10 years, reducing the perceived risk involves reducing quantities. It involves being flexible on the MOQ, and it also involves doing trial orders. It involves effectively allowing the buyer to say to themselves, oh, the risk for me of this order going wrong is minimal. So I'm going to give this new supplier a go. That's what you have to do when you are trying to break into the market for the first time. Let's focus on attention and interest. Now, one of my most favorite sales mnemonics of all time, and it has served me incredibly well over the years, is the AIDA sales mnemonic. I'm sure you've all heard of it. AIDA standing for attention, interest, desire, and action. And the main purpose of a trade show is to create attention and interest, not to close a deal. And the main problem that a lot of new entrants to the market have is that they are focusing far too heavily on closing a deal. And they miss the entire purpose of the trade show in the first place, which is to create attention and interest. If you haven't created attention and interest, then you are already failing. So, even if your product is relatively standard, there are ways in which you can still stand out and you can still shine. And you can do that by the way in which you present yourself, the way in which you communicate, and the way in which you create a level of attention and interest. If you work in manufacturing, export sales, or international sales, I share lessons from my years of working in Hong Kong with Chinese manufacturers, manufacturing my own brand of houseware articles and selling those items to international buyers in markets such as North America, Europe, and other major markets around the world. Please consider subscribing if you would like more insights like this. Thank you very much for listening.